All right. Yep, there we go. We should be recording. Hey guys, welcome back to another week. I believe we are on week 14 this week. This semester is coming to a close quicker than I thought it was going to feel like it, but I'm not sure if we're actually technically on the right week because I was looking at it and I thought they extended the semester by a couple of weeks, but at the same time, my week timing lines up differently, so I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to have to get a hold of everybody to figure out when the semester ends, but I digress. Anyway, we are getting back into it. We're kind of at the point now where we need to be rounding everything up, kind of getting things finished up, and getting you guys ready for the final exams. So we will have a final exam. I did decide that we're going to have a final exam in here. It's going to be basically very similar to the CSWA as far as the model itself goes. So you guys are going to make a model, and then you're going to essentially submit the model via a quiz that's inside Campus Connect, or not Campus Connect, Canvas, and you'll be putting in the mass of the component and the center of gravity of the component. So I showed you how to find both of those in last week's lecture. Now, the reason that I'm specifying that is because this week we are going to be doing a model from the book. It's starts on 21-18. It's not super long, but the way that you are going to be turning in the model to me, as well as filling out a quiz, and that quiz is going to have two questions. What is the mass? What is the center of gravity? And you guys are going to have to input those in there, okay? I want you guys to get used to that method of inputting your answers so that by the time, if we get to the CSWA, either this semester or if you guys if we can't get it worked out now and you guys can do it next semester, you know what you're doing, you know how to find that stuff. So it'll be in the last video of last week's lecture. But you will be turning in both the model file, and you'll be taking you'll be answering those inside Canvas, as well as a short, probably like a 5-question quiz inside. So that's all this week. You'll also have a 5-question quiz this week, which is based off of, I'm going to pull some of the questions directly from the final to put into this quiz so that you guys can kind of see what the questions are going to be like. The quiz for the final exam is going to be worth 170 points. The model and subsequent dimensions of this of the exam portion are going to be worth an additional 100 points. So we're talking 270 points for your final here. Okay, it's not weighted. It's going to be just put in as assignments in the semester, so it's not going to be a weighted grade, but we're talking the equivalent of about 3 to 4 weeks of work here on the final exam. So keep an eye out for that. That'll be, I'm not 100% sure when. I need to figure out what's going on with the CSWA. I will let you guys know as soon as I can on that. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it, shall we? So, again, the model that we're going to be doing this week is going to be on page 21-18. We're going to be following the book more or less. And again, you're going to be turning in the model and taking that short two-question quiz. And that's all combined inside the submission of the model. And then you'll have the 5-question quiz to the side of that you'll also need to do. So first up, let's go ahead and start this shindig off by starting a new part. So we're going to go ahead and hit the new and part. Maybe. And while that's thinking, we can go ahead and take a look at our book here, what we're kind of looking at here. So we've got a bracket, essentially, that's going to be made of, it's got a slot, it's got a hole, it's got a cutout in the center of it, and then it's also got a recessed section. So the sketch is on the bottom of page 21-18. That's the general front view sketch of it. So we can go ahead and start this whole thing by starting off with a sketch on our front plane. We're going to click on our front plane, hit the sketch button. It's going to bring us normal to that front plane. Next up, we can start putting in our components. So first, let's go ahead and drop that center line in. You can see that there's a center line. The origin did take me a little bit in this one to find where the origin is. The origin is actually the center point of the furthest left radius, of the, man, I'm getting emails like crazy now. The furthest left radius of the slot. Okay, so let's go ahead and put in a center line first. Grab that center line button, and we'll go ahead and drop that in here, and we're just going to put it kind of subsequently out here. Next up, let's go ahead and put in that slot, because again, that's that the origin is the basis of this slot. So we'll go ahead and click once on the origin. Again, always trying to do that origin the very first thing, so that we know that our part is locked down. With that done, we can go over here to the right, click, and go ahead and drop that slot tool. Let's go ahead and dimension that slot so that we can start getting this thing, getting this scaled out. So it's going to be those two. We're going to go from the center of one to the center of the other. Remember, the way that slots are dimensioned are always the length between the centers, because that essentially is going to give you the full stroke of whatever the cylindrical component is. Lots of the time, slots are used to be able to put fasteners through, be able to make the location of the fastener variable. So, so this is what that location variable is. So we'll go ahead and click. That's going to be 0.315. Put that in. Okay, so we got 3.2 on there. I am going to change because this never stays, and this is driving me insane lately. So I'm going to change how many decimals I've got, because I've only got 2 up here. So we're going to go down to the IPS down here. We're going to go to Edit Documents Units, and we're going to go to the length right here. We're going to go ahead and drop that down to 3. We are also down here going to change our mass section properties. We're going to change that to 3 as well while we're in here. So go ahead and hit OK. And now we've got 3. Now it's 0.315. Okay, next up, let's go ahead and do the diameter of these. So I'm going to go ahead and click on there. Now you can see that it's got this in here as a radius, and I don't want that as a radius. In the book, it does say the diameter, and that's generally the way that slots are put in, is with the diameter. The reason this is radius is because SolidWorks sees this as a partial circle, and SolidWorks will always dimension a partial circle with a radius rather than a diameter. It's easily modified, though. All we're going to do is right click on it. We're going to go all the way down here to display options, and then we're going to hit display as diameter. And as soon as I hit that, you can see that we've changed from radius to a diameter, 0.205. Now we can go ahead and double click that, 0.472, hit enter, and there is our slot. Okay, sorry for popping around there. So now we've got our slot done. We can go ahead and start building our shape around the slot. And I'm going to start with the line tool. So just grab your line tool from either the toolbar up on top or the quick access menu bar. I'm going to click, and we're going to start off with just going a very rough shape, as we always do. Okay, so this one we are going to modify a little bit. This one is an arc going from this point here down to the point on the bottom. Now, I don't know if we've covered this before, but with SolidWorks, so right now you can see that I'm in the line tool and that it's pulling a line. If I go back and hover over that beginning point, you can see my little yellow icon change next to it, and now I have an arc. So that's just a pretty nifty little tool that SolidWorks does. I can pull it in and modify its location. So we're going to put this right about here. I don't want to snap it to anything. So I'm going to go to here, and come back up here, and go all the way over here. All right. So there, now I've got my general shape. We can start refining it and pulling it in a little bit. First of all, let's go ahead and start off with the sizes on the left-hand side here. So first, I want to locate this bottom line here. So I'm going to click on that line. that line is located via the center point of our slot here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Come over here, and that is 0.591. Alright, so now that I've got this line located, I can go ahead and locate my top line based off of that at 1.181. Now, the reason that I wanted to do this one first is because if I had modified this height first, it could throw things off. I wasn't sure exactly what our height was going to be. It could have been high, it could have been low, and it could have pulled my lines into overlapping, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to maintain my shape. So this is just going about this in a smart way to be able to define a point. You want to be able to define a line in space prior to changing anything about that line other than spatial representation. So I wanted to lock this new sketch surface around here, this new sketch that we're doing, around this old piece right here, this slot, before I started modifying it. That just locks it in space, makes sure that I know where all my stuff is. Okay, going back into my dimension tool, I'm going to do the same thing with this point here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to define where in space that is by relating it to my already fully defined geometry. So I'm going to click that up there. That's 0.551. And now you can see that we've got this fully defined, and this line fully defined. Next up, let's go ahead and go over here. Let's work our way from left to right. Let's go ahead and change this and modify this one here. So first up, we need this to be an angle. So to do an angle, you always click on the line that you want angled, and then you want to click on a reference line. That's going to be the line that we're pulling that angle from. So I'm going to put mine right there, and that's going to be 30 degrees. Okay, and now I can change a couple of other things. Let's go ahead and keep running, because this here is actually in relationship to this point here. So I'm going to have to pull this back a little bit. And what we need to do is we need to add a relationship between this line here, or this point, but this line and this point are identical at this point. So let's go ahead and add a relationship between this line and this point here. I'm going to make those. The book has these set as vertical, but because I haven't put my radius in here yet, I'm actually going to make these collinear instead, or coincident. So it's going to make this point here be sitting on the same line as this right here. Okay, next up, let's go ahead and change. We need to modify this point right here. And this point here is actually going to sit way down here. It's actually going to be collinear with this point. So I'm going to leave that kind of off in space right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my Extend Entities tool. So that's going to be underneath our Trim Entities. I'm going to go to Extend Entities because I want this to go all the way over to this line. So if I hover over it, it's gonna give me that orange preview to say all the way over here. I'm going to click on that line, and it's going to go ahead and drop that preview. Okay, or drop that line in there. So next up, I need this to be coincident with that. So I'm just going to drag it down here and drop it. And by dropping it, now you can see that that point is black, meaning that point is locked in space. So with that done, I can now do a couple of different dimensions based off of that. So first up, we can go ahead and dimension this radius, this arc here, as 1.417. Okay, so that's going to be that. Next up, we can dimension our full height here from this line up here all the way down to this line down here. And this is going to give us this full height of this general feature on this side. And that is going to be 2.165. So you're going to see we're going to move some pieces there. That's fine. Okay. Next up, we need to dictate where this guy is in space, because you can see all of this geometry over here on this side is still blue. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and relate this to some of the already black or fully defined geometry, which would be this line right here. So let's go ahead and click on that, pull that over here, and that's going to be 0.787. And now you can see we're starting to lock down some of that geometry on this side. This line down here is now fully defined. So, one thing about this line and this line, you can see that we've got a quite abrupt transition here between the arc and this line. It's because those two are not tangent yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and make those tangent. I'm going to click on my arc, hold Control. I'm going to click on this, and now I'm going to hit Make Tangent, and that's going to blow up. I believe that's going to blow up because... Oh, it's not supposed to be tangent. That's why. That's supposed to be like that. I knew that. So, next up, we do need to dictate this length, though. The length of this line right here. So I'm going to go ahead and get back in my tool. I'm going to click on this line, and that line's going to be 0.472. That's going to shorten that. Now you can see that it's pulled that back, and we're kind of getting our what will be our final shape here. Alright? So, next up, we need to go ahead and define where this edge is right here, because you can see that this edge is still pretty loosey-goosey. We don't have a full length here. Now what we do have is a defined length here. We've got a defined distance here, which is essentially from here to here, because remember that this is all kind of in line with each other. So what we need to do is we need to go ahead and put our overall length of this entire component in. So we're going to click on our far right side. Going to come back here, click on our far left. Let's go ahead and drop that down, and it's going to be 3.346. And with that put in there, we now have this fully constrained or fully defined. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and end this video before we start putting in some of the sub features of this. We're going to put in some fillets and radiuses and stuff, and then we'll make an extrusion. So get on to our next video for that.